Hi everyone, today we're going to be talking about the Final Shape Armor Tuning dev update. Now, this is hopefully the last one. Obviously, we've talked about weapons, we've talked about abilities, and today we're going to be talking about armor. Now, this article is very thankfully much shorter than the previous article, so hopefully this video won't be 50 minutes long like the last one was. But without further ado, let's go over some of these exciting changes. So, Hunter, Triton Vice. Now I actually have a Triton Vice build that I mentioned to you guys earlier. It has a Vex Caliber and it's on Void Hunter. The surrounded lingering for 5 seconds is supposed to be matching parity with Syntheseps. This is really nice, right? And the glaive again doesn't need to match your subclass, and now you know the glaive melees now count for the weakening effect of Stylish Executioner, so that's pretty nice. Pretty happy about that. I don't think this is gonna make glaives meta or anything, but it is a nice change, positive change for an exotic that was certainly lacking. The Dragon's Shadow, Ensnaring, Slam, and Ascension, both of these consume your class ability, so it makes sense that they work with the Dragon's Shadow. I don't think this really changes anything. Maybe in PvP if you want to use these two, it's kind of a nice quality of life change, but in terms of PvE, this doesn't really change anything whatsoever. Foe Tracer can now have multiple elements at once. If you deal ability damage somehow that doesn't match your subclass, for example using Prismatic or maybe some other source, you can get multiple ×4 surges at the same time. So in theory, you could run 4-4-4 or maybe 4-4, depending on what kind of setup you have on the weapons that you have equipped. I'm not sure if this works with artifact mods, for example the one from this season that applies Scorch while you're Radiant. I think that's like Flint Striker. I don't know if it works with mods like that. I don't know if it works for like Volt Shot, if that counts as like arc ability damage and you get like a ×4 arc surge, but we'll have to see. Regardless, I don't think that's like super crazy meta or anything like that. Maybe a little bit artifact dependent, but you know, I'm sure people that use Prismatic and build Foe Tracer will be happy about that. 6 Coyote now gets free Reaper. I don't think that's a big change. 6 Coyote is not that strong right now, besides people that are using it to spam like the Hunter Strand clones. Renewal Grasp. Now we already talked about this. You get a Frost Armor stack every 0.9 seconds, so you can max out your DR and it does refresh those stacks every 0.9 seconds. And I did talk about how this was maybe like both a nerf and a buff at the same time, but after doing some reevaluation and listening to some of you guys in the comments, I do think Renewal Grasp, this is an overall buff, and I do really like the fact that not only does this give these Frost Armor stacks to your entire team, but it does last a very long time, right? So these Dusk Fields, they last like 8 or 9 seconds, and then after that you get an additional 13 seconds if you have Rymon, for a total of like what, 20-21 seconds of huge DR. And with some of these changes like Whisper of Torment, for example, and if you use like Shards, for example, to get a lot of regen from breaking your crystal, you're probably going to have another Dusk Field up in time to throw another one and just get DR back by the time your Frost Armor is about to run out. Next up we have Starter Scales. Now Bungie really hates Golden Gun chaining apparently, because this is the third subsequent consecutive whatever nerf that they have done to Golden Gun chaining. So not only is Star Eater going to require not 4 orbs but 6 orbs, now you are going to get a quarter of the extra super energy that you used to get per orb. So the way Star Eater worked is not only does it boost your super by 70% on damage, but you also got more super energy every time you picked up an orb. That extra super energy is going to be quartered on Golden Gun, right? Not only that, but when you do Golden Gun crits, you're going to make reduced super energy orbs as well. So this is a huge amount of nerfs that they have really hammered home to make sure that no one can Golden Gun chain ever again. I mean, this is a crazy amount of nerfing that they're doing, but I don't think anybody really cares, because for the most part, outside of Golden Gun chaining, I don't think this is going to affect Starter Scales users that much, because for the most part, you're usually not using it on Goldie in neutral gameplay, and also getting 6 orbs is not really like the hugest deal in my opinion. Okay, next up we have Titan. So Titan, Ursa Furiosa. Now for those of you that are not really familiar with this new Void aspect Unbreakable, I believed in the teaser the way Unbreakable works is you kind of have a portable mini banner shield, like a mini Void shield that you bring around with you. And so what this exotic now does is that you get super for blocking projectiles with this Unbreakable portable shield while you have it up, and you also get increased move speed if you have this aspect equipped and you're blocking at the same time. So that's kind of cool, I guess. If Banner Shield ever becomes very strong in the meta for whatever reason, even all this stacking DR that's being introduced in the sandbox, if that's not good enough to survive something like a day 1 and you need a Banner Shield, Ursa will certainly be a little bit more helpful for that. You get a little bit more uptime. Maybe if you have 2, you know, chaining Ursa Titans, after 1 Ursa Titan is unblocking, they can put up that Unbreakable shield, get super back, as well as the original refund effect that Ursa already gives you. Eternal Warrior, this Arc Surge that stacks up to ×4. For example, if you're on like Trinity Ghoul, you don't need to be on Arc Titan anymore. You could use Solar Titan and you could stack up your Arc Surges. I don't really know where this would be helpful. I mean, it's a positive change, but it's like I'm not really sure where you would use it. If we ever get like an insanely good arc exotic primary, I suppose it could be a decent like neutral option on subclasses that don't necessarily need a strong armor exotic to excel in survivability, but I don't think it's like super worth it, given that it's kind of just like a ×4 surge. You can already get a ×3 surge if you really wanted one, so it's kind of whatever. Arma change, I think Arma is a little bit better than 6 Coyote, but getting a free copy of Firepower is kind of whatever. The only thing that I want to see is like, if you apply 3 Firepowers plus have this on, will that change something? I don't know. We'll see. But for now, yeah, Armamentarium, free Firepower, it's kind of like whatever. It's a free kind of like small buff. Trinity isn't strong. I mean like in endgame content. Trinity is obviously strong, but like I don't think this is going to affect endgame content at all. Khepri's Horn. Now, I was planning on making like a Khepri's Horn build. Well, I had a Khepri's Horn build planned already for use in like Legend Onslaught for the build testing that we were going to do this season. That might be delayed to next season. We'll see. But the blast damage is already pretty decent. You know, you can get a guaranteed ignite if you combine it with some abilities or maybe with like Sunshot. But now it's getting doubled blast damage, and you're also getting more stacks from Ashes, a significantly higher amount of stacks with Ashes. I believe it goes up to like 80 or 90 stacks with Ashes. It works with Eruption as well, which is pretty cool. And it scorches on the way out and on the way back, I believe. So that's pretty nice. Khepri's Horn definitely going to be a lot easier to get your ignitions off now. Next up, we have Syntheseps. I don't think this changes anything, right? Obviously, the biggest nerfs to Syntheseps were when you combined it with Banner of War. Banner of War got that reduced scalar, and Syntheseps also got that reduced scalar when you have Banner of War. I don't think this is really a big deal. Surrounded, lingering for 8 seconds really made no sense to me. For those of you that don't know, Syntheseps, when you're surrounded, let's say you killed all the ads that gave you surrounded, for 8 additional seconds, you would have that enhanced biotic enhancement effect. And that's kind of insane, given that the actual perk surrounded only lingers for like 1 or 2 seconds, right? So it makes absolutely no sense that Syntheseps had this insanely long linger. I would like them to buff all of these lingering surrounded effects to be around the same timer. They could be around 4 seconds and I wouldn't really care, but it didn't really make any sense why Syntheseps had 8 seconds of linger. That's like insane. No other effect really lingers for that long. That's requires you to have specific like ads near you or something like that. Severance Enclosure, some people are like complaining about this on Twitter. They're like, why did you nerf Severance Enclosure? I don't think this like actually matters that much. I mean, like line of sight being required for explosions, sure, like it's like a nerf, but those of you who are using Severance Enclosure, I don't think you're going to be really affected by this that much, so it's kind of whatever. And also reduced knockback, I suppose. I honestly, I don't know. When I was using Severance Enclosure, it was a while ago, but like the knockback wasn't like super crazy anyway, so I don't think that's going to matter too much either. Okay, Warlock is up next. Mantle of Battle Harmony. I think this kind of flew under a lot of people's radars. So obviously before, if you needed to farm a super, you would use something like Vesper of Radius, or you would use Nezarec Sin. I think Mantle of Battle Harmony has kind of lodged itself in between those two exotics. The biggest thing here is that, yes, it kind of got a little bit of a nerf, right? So before, it used to get a flat, I believe, 3% per kill, and it could increase to like 4.5% or 4.45%. So before, it was a flat 3% per kill, but you had a 2-second internal cooldown, and 2 seconds doesn't sound like a long time, but I played with Mantle of Battle Harmony before at Zemo's recommendation, and that 2 seconds is really noticeable. So no internal cooldown, as long as you're killing a bunch of ads with like, you know, Sunshot or Graviton or whatever it is, it's going to be a very fast way to get your super. So I'm pretty interested in how this ends up panning out. Obviously, it's not going to scale super well into like very late game, end game content, but you know, I think this kind of flew under a lot of people's radars. I think it's going to be a good way to get your super very quickly, as long as you have a good supply of ads. Ballador's Wrathweavers, a lot of people are talking about this. Whenever you cast your Frost Pulse Rift or Shockwave or your super ends, you get full Frost Armor stack. So yesterday we were talking about how Ballador's Wrathweavers, you know, whether or not this is good depends on how many Frost Armor stacks you get. And I was going to say, you know, if you only get 1 stack, then I probably would have preferred the old version of Ballador's, which is where you got that Stasis Shard Overshield for 50 HP with 50% DR. But now, full Frost Armor stacks, that's 36% DR on command, right? So if you have a build that allows you to get your Rift back fairly quickly, 36% DR just for, you know, placing your class ability, pretty good, right? It's kind of on demand. Renewal Hunter, obviously a little bit more, you know, longevity. Stag Warlock, obviously a little bit less DR, but you know, maybe, you know, more universal. You can use it on any subclass, but still pretty impressive, I would say. Still pretty impressive. I don't know if it refreshes the duration of that Frost Armor as you sit there in the Rift. I don't believe it does. So that's kind of, I guess, a downside compared to Renewal. It's not as long, like I said, but still pretty impressive regardless. Seeking Filaments, Empowering Rift now refreshes Devour on re-entry. I think this is just a quality of life change, because if you were in an Emp Rift on Seeking Filaments, you probably were already refreshing Devour by killing enemies. So, you know, kind of nice, I suppose, but I don't think it's like a major game changer for Seeking Filaments or anything like that. Verity's Brow, this is just, a lot of these changes, by the way, are quality of life for Prismatic, right? So Verity's Brow, they're expecting you to have a grenade that is different from your subclass, right? So now your kills, when you get kills on Verity's Brow, they now need to match your grenade type and not your subclass. So for example, if you are on like
Prismatic Warlock and you're on Threadling Grenade, then you would need to get Strand kills.
Sunbracers got a nerf. Some people are saying, you know, oh, this is a big nerf. It's not a big nerf, right? 5 to 4 nades, don't care. A lot of the time when I'm playing Sunbracers, that 5th nade, I'm throwing it back where the 1st nade was, to be honest with you, right? It's rare that you have to ever trap 5 different locations at the same time. It's rare that you can even access 5 locations at the same time like that, where there's consistently ads spawning that are not just going to die to your nade. So I think 4 nades is fine. The bonus duration will hurt a little bit, I will say. But for the most part, that's not really what makes Sunbracers super broken. And unless they scale this back significantly and completely like destroy the exotic's identity, I don't think Sunbracers is really going to feel this nerf too much. Cenotaph Mask. Okay, now this is a nerf that I think people are underreacting to, because a lot of people are saying, oh, you know, oh, Cenotaph Mask, I can't believe they only changed it so it's only 1 mark per target. It's not that big of a deal. It is kind of a big deal, okay? The entire reason why Cenotaph Mask is strong in stuff like GMs, or in stuff like Master Raids, or in stuff like Day 1 Raids, or in stuff like Pantheon, or blah, 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 in all of that hard content, the whole reason why Cenotaph is good is because you can have multiple Warlocks, and they all go, oh, there's a champion, everyone Cenotaph, oh, everyone mark him, boom, and then 4 heavy bricks just drop out of him, right? In a GM, now think about it like this, in a GM, every time you are killing a champion, you can only make 1 heavy brick off of him, and remember, Cenotaph bricks are worse than Aeon bricks. Cenotaph bricks give you 10% of your heavy ammo reserves. Aeon bricks give you 60% of a regular heavy ammo brick, which in practice ends up being bigger than Cenotaph bricks, at least in my experience. So only getting 1 mark per target, honestly, to me, will make Cenotaph kind of like a quality of life exotic for when you want to mark a target, but you can't go up to it and finisher it. But honestly, this really does heavily impact Cenotaph Mask's viability outside of those situations where you're going to kind of like mark 1 target per person, and you're kind of like taking things slow and you're doing it from range. But really, I think this does cut down on the use cases of Cenotaph Mask rather significantly. So it is a big nerf. I think it is deserved though. And yeah, I don't know about this whole like mark visible to allies only thing. I think some people are like complaining about that. I don't really think that's that big of a deal, because you do get that target mark thing on your HUD. In the final shape, obviously we are getting a HUD rework, so hopefully, you know, you'll actually be able to see that. In terms of the mark though, just remember, when you mark a target, it glows red, and there's also that X on it, right? I'm assuming they're only going to remove one of those things. So maybe they remove the X, but it still glows red, or maybe it still glows red, but you remove the X. So if they remove both of those things, it is definitely a questionable change. But yeah, I don't really know quite what they mean by this. It's a bit of a strange change. But yeah, this is really the main attraction. Okay, finally, we're going to talk about general changes, right? So this is stuff that was kind of scattered throughout the TWAB or towards the end. Number 1, there's going to be a shift towards powered melee effects not being triggered by knockout, combination blow, etc. So this is a really big change, because remember, a long time ago, maybe 8-9 months ago, I did this thing where I discussed Solar Titan in some context, and I told people the reason why Solar Titan is so good is because you have a constantly refreshable powered melee, right? And now when you have Roaring Flames, even your regular melee counts as a powered melee. So all of these special melee effects, whether it's knockout or void overshield offensive bulwark melees, or if it's combination blow, any of these melees that are affected by aspects or affected by these different subclasses, there are different effects, they all trigger powered melee effects without actually having to consume a melee charge. So Bungie actually talked about how it's kind of difficult to balance melee effects that trigger these powered melee consequences and rewards, but they don't actually consume a melee charge. So you get all the reward without any of the risk or payment. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that they were kind of aware of that paradigm. So that's pretty cool. I'm glad that they discussed this. I don't think it's as big of a deal anymore. I think the strongest example of this was easily Hammer Titan, but now that that's been nerfed into the ground, you can't spam the hammer as much anymore. It's not the end of the world. But yeah, certainly something interesting to be discussing now. Masterworked exotic armor now has an artifice slot. That's really nice. A good quality of life change. Obviously, you know, before you would have to deal with like 4 legendaries and you would have 12 points worth of artifice. Now you can have 15, which is nice. And I like that, you know, you don't have to regrind exotic armor or anything. They're just going to give it to you just for masterworking it. So that's really nice as well. Final 2 changes. Ammo finder counters now persist through death. This wasn't even something that I was aware of really. Ammo finder counters apparently reset when you die. So now they won't reset when you die, but because in playtesting, Bungie has found that people are just getting more ammo now as a result of this. So they kind of nerfed finder mods and made it so that you need 20% more kills to proc the finder effect and get a finder brick to drop. And finally, the last change, raid mods will no longer cost anything, which is I don't think this affects anyone except for speedrunners. Yeah, I think this affects speedrunners. For example, in Garden of Salvation, right? Probably the best example I can think of. In Garden of Salvation, on your boots, if you wanted to run 3 surges cost 9 energy, right? And so if you wanted to run Enhanced Relay Defender, which costs 3 energy, you don't have 12 armor energy, right? So you'd have to give up a surge, and then you'd have to run Enhanced Relay Defender, or you would run regular Relay Defender, which costs 1, and then you would run 3 surges so that you would have the full 10. So this only really affects speedrunners. Their kind of justification was that like raid mods are kind of underused. They don't feel impactful enough, which is certainly weird. I would have just said, you know, this is a nice quality of life change. I think you should just be able to use raid mods without paying energy. But certainly I disagree that they're not impactful enough. I think people just don't know about them or don't care enough to keep raid armor so that they actually use the raid mods. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this brief summary of my thoughts on the armor tuning changes. Tomorrow, the double special video will be dropping. So the update to double special, a lot of you guys have been asking, hey, you know, I see you're still using double special. So you're going to talk about how you still use double special? You know, how can I use double special? We're going to talk about that. It's a much shorter video than the original because a lot of the original still applies, but still, I hope you guys enjoy it nonetheless. So with that said, I will leave you for now and I will see you tomorrow.